Okay, looks like the auditorium doors are virtually open and we're all virtually funneling through them very quickly. We'll give folks about 10 more seconds to get into the room and then we'll get started. By the looks of it, it looks like this is going to be a popular session, Jack. And we're almost there to that magic number. Oh, what a day it's been. So hello, everyone. I hope you're joining us safe and healthy and happy from your homes. Since many of us are working from home, quite a few of us have been sharing pictures of our work from home places. I know Jack shared his on Twitter. Mark and I have shared ours. We've seen a few more. So I would love to see your creativity on Twitter with the hashtag VDI Summit. If you do have questions during this session, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we'll either answer them live or Jack can follow up with you afterwards. Of course, the replay of this session is going to be available shortly, and it will be available for 30 days. So you'll always have an opportunity to go back and go over the session again if you'd like. Stick around for a raffle at the end of our event. I'll be announcing that here very shortly. And thanks to all our sponsors for making this wonderful virtual conference what it is today. I'm kind of getting bummed that our VDI Summit is nearly over. I can't thank you enough for joining us, and I promise that we still have more great stuff ahead. And this session is no exception. Anybody who's been involved in the VDI or MDM world knows that this guy's name very well. So it's my pleasure to introduce the man, the myth, the trombone player from his home in San Francisco, Jack Madden. Take it away, Jack.
Hello, well, thank you very much for having me. So I'm Jack Madden, and I'm super excited to be returning here for my second VDI Performance Summit, and the second one that we did virtual. So as you heard, I'm coming at you live from San Francisco. Like everybody else, I'm broadcasting from my home today. And as I saw somebody say on Twitter a few days ago, the most fun thing about having all of these meetings and conferences from home is that you get to see what everybody's setup looks like. So here's where I am today. I had to find the only extra display that I happen to have in my house and bring the TV around and rearrange the furniture and use the stool as a desk, but we make do. So by day, as you may know, I am the executive editor of RyanMadden.com at TechTarget. There, along with my esteemed colleague, Kyle Johnson, who has been busy this week covering Okta Octane, as you can see from our articles today. And by night, as was mentioned, I'm a classical musician. So this is the orchestra that I play in. You can't really see me here because I'm in the back. There I am. But it's okay that I'm in the back because I play trombone, and trombone is the loudest instrument. Now, of course, for the last 3 weeks, I've been having to play from home. And as I mentioned, the trombone is the loudest instrument. But again, that's okay because I have this handy device called a practice mute that makes it so nice and quiet when I play that a baby could be sleeping in the next room. And it's actually been tested, and it works out. So my job in the industry at at TechTarget is to follow all of this whole end user computing industry. So of course that means desktop virtualization and VDI and DAS, but it also means BYOD and user trends, that's really where I got my start, if you remember, all the way back to 2011. And so that means digging into iOS, Android, Mac OS, Chrome OS, how these works. Identity management and security and authentication, Windows management, and all sorts of things that are like whatever's coming next, like IoT and virtual reality and virtual assistants and voice, and whatever is coming along the line. And so it's an interesting position that I get to be in, and I feel really fortunate that I'll emphasize the whatever is next part at the very end that I listed here. As I look across the whole end user computing space today, across all of these different topics, over the last 12 to 18 months, there's one topic and one term that I've been really hearing resurging all over the place. And I'm sure you've heard it too. It's, of course, employee experience. And that's why my presentation is today, is what does employee experience mean for VDI and EUC? And when I say everybody is talking about employee experience, I mean everybody. Today I'll have examples from Microsoft, from VMware, who, as a matter of fact, are running their employee experience event online today. Citrix, if you remember from Synergy last year, employee experience was huge. We hear all the analysts, the likes of Gartner, talk about it. And when you read those like magazines oriented at CIOs, which, I'm not a CIO, I'm just a blogger, but they tell me that CIOs and all sorts of other C-level leadership are interested in employee experience. And also, interestingly, it comes up very much in the desktop and virtual desktop and end user monitoring space. Over the last 12 months, it's all about employee experience. But you might be thinking, hold on. It's employee experience for the last 12 months, or the last 18 months? Don't we already do employee experience? And haven't we been doing it for like a decade or more? I mean, after all, we're at the VDI Performance Summit today. Like, what have we been doing all this time? So much of the stuff that we do in the desktop virtualization industry is about this. I mean, look at all what we do about monitoring to make sure that our apps launch quickly and that our devices are responsive. And we're very careful about our environment sizing and our server sizing and making our storage work. Again, the ultimate goal being that the employee can actually work and have a good experience. And we spend years talking about graphics and protocols. And I remember when the virtual GPU revolution really got started, 2000, early part of the last decade. And then over the last 5 years, we've been talking a lot about enabling voice and video over desktop virtualization. All of these things are about the employee experience. And same thing I alluded to earlier, this whole consumerization of IT thing. I mean, remember back, we launched this website dedicated to the consumerization of IT all the way back in 2011. And holy cow, look at how young that dude, well, really both that picture of Brian and me on this website. This is a screen capture from 2011 when we were talking about mobile device management and BYOD and this whole consumerization thing. So like, again, this was all about employee experience, and we've been doing it 10 years now. And over the last 10 years, we figured out all of this world of enterprise mobility management, enabling all of these different devices. We've figured out the world of identity management and enabling our SaaS apps. So like when I first heard over the last 12 to 18 months, this whole trend of people talking about employee experience, I'm like, okay, yeah, sounds good, but like, we've been doing this for as long as I've been in the industry. So what's new? So yes, we have been doing it before, but there is definitely a new wave that's happening right now. It's not just in our imagination. It's not just a marketing thing. Things really are changing over the last year. So you might be wondering, what's different this time around? Well, first of all, it's just been a decade since that whole BYOD and consumerization of thing happened. And in that decade, we've had a good economy. Of course, the last 6 weeks have been very different. But I'll get to what employee experience means in times like these towards the end of the presentation. But of course, the good economy meant a war for talent, which means we're much more concerned about recruiting and retention, and that leads into an employee experience. Another thing that large corporations have done over the years is they've really invested into customer experience, with the idea that if the customer has a good experience, of course, there'll be a repeat customer and a better customer. And many of those organizations that have done those customer experience efforts are now turning to employee experience. And the other thing that's different now versus a decade ago is that a decade ago, mobile devices and SaaS apps were the new things on the block. It was new. We didn't know if they were real, how to deal with them. But now we've solved mobility and SaaS apps. Like so many of the basic questions that we had, from presentations about consumerization way back when, those questions are all answered now. So it's time now to just look at what's next. And that's why we're turning to employee experience. Another thing that's different in 2020 versus 2010 is that ratings and feedback are everywhere in ways that they weren't 10 years ago. Of course, every presentation about the changing business environment likes to talk about Uber and all those other gig economy applications that we're giving five stars to everyone: Uber, Amazon, Lyft. We'll probably be giving star ratings to people after this presentation. One of the biggest signs of this ratings and feedback being everywhere things was just a few years ago when SAP bought Qualtrics for $8 billion. You know that when one of the hugest business software companies in the world buys a rating and experience measurement and review company for $8 billion, that's 8,000,000,000,000. That's a lot of money. You know that employee experience is a big deal. And we see this everywhere we go. I mean, back when we used to go to airports, like you'd go through even the security line to give feedback on the TSA, and you see the little kiosk that has like the 4 different buttons of the frowny face on one end to the smiley face on the other end. This is our world in 2020 that it wasn't our world 10 years ago. And the last example that I'll give is things like Glassdoor. Like, was Glassdoor a thing 10 years ago? Like, who knows? But I think it was around, but I don't remember anybody really using it. But today, this is the environment of transparency and reviews that we live in. So while we've been doing things that are related to employee experience for a long time, there are a lot of different conditions and new things that are going on in 2020. So let's look at how the end user computing industry is thinking about employee experience and how the IT industry at large is thinking about it. One of the things that I do is I'll actually give a plug for TechTarget's website, whatis.com. You can sign up for their word of the day email, and it's actually like really great. So this is our online dictionary that has all these definitions about all those crazy new terms that you hear. And that includes employee experience. And so their definition here is: employee experience is a worker's observations and perceptions about his or her employment at a particular company. Experience is often influenced by the company's physical workspace, the work-life balance the company provides, and technology that enables productivity. So we're here to talk about the technology part, of course. So that's one definition. Another one that I want to point out, to really be in a loop of what's going on in the tech space right now, is this book, The Employee Experience Advantage by Jacob Morgan. This came out in 2017. And if you really want to know what all these organizations that are talking about employee experience, how they're really thinking about it, know that this book is something that's being read in a lot of marketing organizations and C-suites, and by a lot of people and thinkers in the industry and here in the Valley, and but really all across the tech space. So I want to take just a few slides and give you like the 50-cent tour of how Jacob Morgan defines this whole employee experience thing. And so the way that starts out is by thinking of the ways that our relationships as employees have changed with our organizations. And since the beginning of time, it was really a utility thing. Employees provide labor, the company provides some sort of compensation, and it's very transactional. But of course, with the Industrial Revolution came the productivity stage or style of employee relationships. And so think of the tailorization and someone standing over workers with a stopwatch, figuring out which is the best way to grab the widget as it comes down the assembly line and connect it to the other widget and put it along. And if you grab with this arm instead of this arm, then you can go faster. And so that's when companies really began to figure out ways to extract much more value from their employees. The stage after that is the employee engagement stage. This is about the last 30 years or so. And the promise here was, this is ways to make employees more engaged. They're not just cogs in the machine. This is when we saw a lot of mission statements and culture committees, and people would do surveys about employee engagement, and they would start having perks that would maybe be unthinkable for people back in that productivity or transactional employee engagement stage. But the argument here is that the reality of employee engagement didn't quite live up to this. A lot of the efforts tended to be short-term, and they looked at the effects, but didn't try to find the true cause. And of course, you can take all the surveys that you want, but if you ignore the data from those surveys, then you're not really going to make a difference. So what is an employee experience now? And the idea is that it's not just cosmetic changes. It's not just the perk that's, we're going to start having like a quarterly party and now someone will be like happy for a while, but then go back to their base level. Rather, it's the long-term redesign of the organization and designing the employment experience with employees, not for them. And to wrap it up, again, this definition from Morgan's book is familiar with the one that we saw earlier. It's the intersection of employee expectations, needs, and wants, and the organizational design of those expectations, needs, and wants. And so this is all being driven by, of course, mobility, demographic changes, technology changes, globalization, companies that want to do better than they did with their engagement efforts, companies that see that employee experience is going to translate to better experiences for their customers, the talent war, people analytics. This is looking at what actions may cause your employees to churn and things like that, and transparency, as we mentioned with that Glassdoor thing. So all of these things are driving employee experience, but again, like, how do you do employee experience? And again, this is from the theoretical level of this book that's making the rounds, and we'll talk on the technological side as well. And he talks about reason for being. This is like the 2020 version of a mission statement: the physical environment, the cultural environment, and of course, what we're here to talk mostly about today, the technological environment. And these are the technological environments, as they break it down, are all things that should be very familiar to those of us in the EUC space. We're talking having tech available to everyone. So, hey, it's not just the sales reps that get the cool new laptops. It's like everybody that gets the cool new laptops. Consumer grade, easy to use. This is something that I'm sure we've all been on board with for a long time. And sourcing our technology via related around employee needs and the experience of using them rather than just the business requirements. So again, to wrap up the section, this is the thinking behind a lot of organizations as they're looking at this whole employee experience trend today in 2020. This is what has been on their mind for the last few years. So let's look at how the end user computing industry is responding to this new thinking about employee experience. And so I'll start with the big handful of EUC vendors that we always kind of think of. And I'm just going to go in alphabetical order and start with Citrix. And of course, one of the big inflection points for Citrix in their employee experience journey was their acquisition of Sappho for bringing micro apps into the workspace. Since then, they've been talking, about how micro apps in Sappho, their effects on productivity and time savings, how they want to target general purpose users, not just the virtual desktop users, and how they want to align themselves with C-level strategic needs rather than like tactical, like here are your virtual desktops. And so if you look at their products from the last year or so, or last year and a half, you can see how they all map directly to improving the end user experience. From the Workspace app, the micro apps, the universal search, Citrix Analytics for performance is a big one. Their work with SaaS apps and identity management, and even their virtual assistant, which launched recently. So you can see that a lot of what they're doing is mapping directly to employee experience. And we can look at Microsoft as well. Of course, they're in a unique place. Like they can collect a lot of telemetry and analytics from all of their products, and they are the company behind Windows and Intune and SCCM and Azure AD, and of course Office and Teams. And you can see how Teams, like especially over the last year or so, can map to employee experience. But another thing that we can do is also just go to their website and look at their recent white paper. This is the Microsoft IT Showcase, and from February 26th, so not that long ago, this is reinventing the employee experience at Microsoft, where they detail their 6 core investments of frictionless devices, which you can understand how that fits in, like with a modern managed Windows device, an empowered employee journey, seamless teamwork, you see how that fits in with Teams, a digital workplace, modern support, and digitally assisted workday. And we see like in Teams, all the cool stuff they're doing, like with live real-time translation and stuff. So that's mapping directly into employee experience as well. And then how about VMware? I mean, they're talking, they've been talking about employee experience a lot this year as well. You can see it's been all over their blog for the last year. This is a blog post from Sean Bass. And if you look back at their EUC portfolio, really it's mapped to employee experience for a long time. I mean, I remember when Horizon App Manager, that is the roots of what is now Workspace ONE Intelligent Hub, when we were first talking about this 10 years ago as a way to get apps to users. And then if you look through the AirWatch acquisition to enable BYOD, enable mobility, and then bringing Workspace ONE and VMware Identity Manager and AirWatch and everything together, it's all been mapping to employee experience for a long time. But you can also look at the last year or two of investments, mobile flows, the digital employee experience management, the day zero experience, concierge services, onboarding, the people app, the virtual assistant, what they do around privacy, and like things like the Workspace ONE Passport to bring this to the physical world as well. Everything that they're doing today, it maps to employee experience. And other parts of the end user computing industry are mapping to this, especially all forms of monitoring. In talking to various folks in the monitoring space, we see that that this is a huge deal. We need to monitor the employee experience so that we can measure it and know that it's a good one. So all of these companies are doing all of these things that they can map to employee experience. But the question is, like, why should we as EUC practitioners care about employee experience? Well, it's the same reasons that we cared about mobile and cloud. It's something that our leadership is obviously thinking about, and so it can be a key career thing to get into. And we saw that like mobile and SaaS went from like 10 years ago being like, what's this mobile thing all about, that it actually became a big thing that came to pass. And then, of course, there's the business value of the employee experience correlates with customer experience, which correlates with revenue growth and employee recruitment and retention, and good reviews and such. So there are a lot of reasons to care about why this is coming into the pike. The last one is that you can also use employee experience as a way to help drive buy-in for a lot of these particular projects that you're looking at right now. So one of the things that we can do is understand that there are a lot of things in EUC that are going to map to employee experience, like monitor, as I mentioned, doing modern management for our laptops, modern collaboration, workspace portals, getting rid of passwords. Boy, getting rid of passwords is going to be a big one for employee experience. The workflow apps, the virtual assistants, or maybe it's even like re-examining, like, hey, maybe it's time to say yes to BYO Android, or maybe you know, we're going to do device choice and say yes to Macs, and for example. So all these aspects of EUC map to employee experience, but of course the message that we can take away from, for example, Jacob Morgan's book, and that folks are thinking about, is that it's not just about the technology. Of course, this is something that needs to be done in collaboration with human resources and the business side of our organizations and the C-suite, and understand that this is like not a quick fix. It's not like, oh, suddenly we do just one of those things on the list and we have employee experience. No, it's a broader process of design thinking and thinking of the employee experience over business requirements. Now, of course, today on April 2nd, 2020, I think of the date here, our environment is changing very much. And a lot of us have been thinking about, in the end user computing space, we've been thinking about work from home, disaster recovery, and all of these end user computing technologies that help with our changing environment. Well, all of those technologies completely overlay with technologies that will make the end user computing employee experience better. And all of this is also good for business flexibility. The environment is changing, the economy is changing. We want our businesses to be as flexible as possible. We can help our businesses by be more flexible, in part as EUC folks, by making the EUC environment more flexible and allow our employees to be, have a better experience. And in my last 2.5 minutes here, I want to say, speaking of changing times and a changing environment, I want to say personally that over the last couple of weeks, it's just been really inspiring to see how everybody in the end user community has really been stepping up and really offering their support. And I've been spending so much time chatting with friends in the industry and like working together, and this feeling of, even though we can't be physically together at conferences, I feel like our community is becoming even that much more stronger and even that much supportive of each other in the last 3 weeks. So I want to say that makes me very optimistic, and I love being part of this community, and I hope everybody else loves being part of the end user community as well. But so my last words, to put a bow on this, we've done mobile, we've done cloud, we've done VDI, we're doing DAS, we're doing all these great things. I really do see employee experience as one of our next big tasks and our next framing mechanism that we can think about our roles coming down the line. So with that, that's what I have prepared today. So I'd like to thank everybody so much for having me here and for listening to the presentation. It's been a blast to share this with you from my living room here in San Francisco.
Yes, thanks so much, Jack. I remember last year you built a little studio with some stuff you had left over from previous shows, and people were surprised. It's so funny to, we're going around the globe following the sun basically in time zones to look inside everybody's house, and to add a little bit to your story about employee experience. We are currently running the VDI Like Approach survey. as Jack, you are very aware of, you always promote it as the first one. Thank you very much. One of the questions in there is, how satisfied are you with the current VDI environment? So it's a question about technology, but it's not a question that's technical, right? It's not a product or a version or a thing. And for many years, I was always disappointed. While the age of the average VDI environment was going up and the technology was maturing, this number was going down. And now for the first time in the preliminary results, we're seeing that people are happier with their EUC environments. So I think we're finally getting there to a point where this is, is this the year of VDI? I think I've heard that one a few too many times today already, but...
As I'm reflecting back, like, I just think back to all of these questions that we had years ago about how to, best enable the consumerization of IT. Like 9 years ago when we launched that other website about the consumerization, we had so many questions about how to do consumerization. And we've answered a lot of them. Like, the world knows how to use EMM and identity management for their SaaS apps. And, we've seen the storage and graphics and DAS revolution happen in the desktop virtualization space. And that's like super exciting to have that come together. And now I think, this employee experience thing is going to be the next 10 years of making all of those experiences even more connected together, so that the workspace environment, the EUC environment, can be whatever the user needs it to be, securely on whatever device, wherever they are. Like, I'm just like so excited to see what's next.
All right. Well, I don't think you're the only one. I saw a lot of people chatting about this. Also, there's a chat. There's a virtual expo you can visit. So you can jump in there, have a laugh, have a serious question if you like. Jack, I want to thank you for helping us out again, even in these busy times with our virtual summit. Thanks for being here. Session that is next is actually our own Blair Parkhill. He will be talking about the performance research he did on Windows Virtual Desktop and Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session. And right after that, we will also raffle. So for all of you that have joined the quizzes and surveys and have visited the booths, the raffle is at the end of Blair's session. So please stick around for that. And with that, let's jump to the next session, and I hope to see you there. Take care, and thanks, Jack.
Thanks for having me.